Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Dead Malls, your one-stop shop for malls, retail, and of course, everything in the details. And welcome back to Season 6 and our first Houston expedition here. Today as we leave Greens Point, we travel down and around 610 into the lovely city of Pasadena to check out their very own Macroplaza Mall, or Pasadena Town Square, whatever tickles your fancy. Between Macroplaza and Greens Point in a beauty contest, I was quite torn. Macroplaza features some of the best 80s aesthetics I've ever seen in a mall. Tie that in with the theming and the colors and you're left with this retro classic. But before I spoil too much, I'd like to take a moment to shout out our winner who's able to successfully guess the next mall. Very nice job, MMC Mall Productions. If you would like to have your chance at being shouted out in the next episode, stick around for the next challenge. Anyways, as we drive around the exterior, let it give you just a hint of the wild world we're about to dive into. Let's see where the Tex-Mex culture takes us, tell its story, and see how Macroplaza Mall was doing as of my visits throughout 2023. I wonder if it's open. There's like no one here, but the lights are on inside. Oh yeah. Before we do get in here, let me preface by saying Macroplaza is easily one of the world's best preserved time capsules, showcasing an 80s identity long forgotten in the past. This mariachi band, as you'll see coming up here, always breaks my heart because each time I come back, another member of the gang is gone. That food court sign is so cool. Really? Okay. Just getting in here, I mean, the mall speaks for itself. It is quite possibly one of the most beautiful, colorful places ever, and I could genuinely spend all day here. With working AC at the time of filming, it was a mind-bogglingly better experience than Greens Point. The first suburban Foley store is where our story begins, dating all the way back to the ripe year of 1961 in the booming city of Houston, Texas. Being located in Sharpstown Mall, one of the city's first malls, the store would see immense success in their initial year, and would in turn begin planning their second, the latter of which would be plopped down in the middle of Pasadena, an eastern suburb of the city. Originally occupying the land was a relatively new subdivision, which would just be bulldozed in the way of a bank, City Hall and the Foley's, which would open in 1962. Then owners of Foley's had plans to build a mall on the site, which would be a town center for the city. These plans, however, would stay on the down low, and for years would bake in the oven, with a few parking lots, refusing homeowners getting kicked out, and a massive grass plot taking up the space. It wasn't until the late 70s, over 15 years later, that the idea of a mall would begin to stir up again. Now, the reason for all of the Mexican-American theming throughout the mall is something we'll eventually come to within our history, and while I point out a few of my favorite landmarks, I won't tell you about all of the pretty sights, otherwise, of course, we'd be here all day. So, enjoy the Ballad of the Empty Center Court, as this all would have once been a massive fountain and stage, now bone dry and long forgotten. As we skirt the edge of the drained pond that was once the center court fountain, we arrive to the long-dead Dillard's Wing. Now, similar to Green's Point, it presents some mind-blowing liminal sights, peeks into different realities, dimensions, or perhaps peeks into our very own liminal subconscious. In 1979, then owners of Foley's, Federated, would announce their plans to build a new 225,000 square foot mall on the site, to feature 80 inline tenants in all, and feature one other department store. Pasadena Town Square, as it would come to be known, would quickly begin construction, during of which rumors would circulate for a short time that the mall would feature 2 stories. And while this never came to fruition, the mall would be doubled in size through construction, now to include a junior anchor as well as 20 more stores. An opening date would be scheduled for the spring of '82, and as eager residents awaited their slice of the American shopping mall, Pasadena Town Square neared completion. There's something about this old Dillard's Wing, there's some charm or energy to it, whether it be the oversized pottery, street lamps, or the many rainbow-colored storefronts. For me, I felt like I was a kid again, walking through this mall, and especially down here, between the rainbow-striped storefronts, I felt like I was in a forgotten theme park, a world of pure imagination. On March 4th, 1982, Pasadena Town Square would officially open its doors to the public, and while I can't find any record of what celebrations were actually held, I can tell you what they found. Residents from all over western Houston would gather under the sunlit corridors, discovering first the massive big box anchors, which hooked in each end of the mall, being Josk's on the north end and Foley's down south. Betwixt lie over 100 stores and services. What shoppers found were stores like Sam Goody, KB Toys, Mrs. Fields, Walgreens, Spencer's Gifts, Walden Books, Gadzooks, and hundreds more. In the center court, a massive fountain tied it all in, connecting the food court to the rest of the mall, with junior anchor Palais Royale right in front of the fountain. The mall aesthetically featured the exact same iconic aesthetics you see today, never majorly renovated, and while not as public as the openings of malls like Sharpstown, Greenspoint, and San Jacinto, Pasadena Town Square didn't need that media wave. It was a mall for its city, and for years, Pasadena would only prosper off of the new mall.
We have bikes, benches, rowers, ski machines, treadmills, jump ropes, curl bars, ankle wrist weights, or aerobic exercise mats, skates.
Pasadena Town Square would see very little change throughout most of the 80s. Other than Josks becoming Dillard's in 1987, nothing much would happen. It wasn't until 1997, 18 years after the mall would open, that its next anchor would debut, being a brand new Sears. This was, as you saw at the beginning, Sears' 90s store design, where they tried to focus on a more modern, contemporary look. This would, of course, end up being their last store ever built in the metro, and for good reason, as while Sears was joining the lineup itself was starting to shift. Name brands would slowly begin to close up shop as the mall over the years would see less and less foot traffic. By the early 2000s, it just wasn't what it was 20 years ago. There was a golden era, but that was so brief and the tide would shift. Pasadena going into the new millennia would flutter as the end began.
I said that's like the coolest swing ever though, it's just so quiet.
I don't know what kind of tax service they run here, but I'm glad they kept this little stage thing for their cubicles. I imagine every 30 minutes they all take their work outside for some very much needed vitamin D, but you'd have to let me know, what was this little jut out thing before it became the scenic office? As we begin our trek down towards Sears, I should be one to mention the mall's current layout situation. As you'll see coming up here, a good third of it is blocked off. Behind the wall would have once been the playground, and beyond that, Foley's. And we'll take a peek over the top of the wall, but sadly, we won't be able to go further. By 2006, Foley's was converting all of their stores to Macy's, but nothing was concrete at the mall yet. In fact, rumors would instead begin to circulate that they were planning to close the location, as the store was seeing dramatic decreases in foot traffic. Instead, the store would be rebranded, and Dillard's, after 19 years, would close up their location for good, thus beginning the mall's slow and eventual death. For a short time, an oil equipment company called Ventec would lease out the old Dillards. However, this did little for the mall. By the time Ventec was gone, PTS was going through an onslaught of new owners and new plans to try to fix up the aging mall, as by then it still featured a design very reminiscent of the early years of Greenspoint. Of course, nothing would be done. Maybe one day I'll come back here, then one day I can get behind that wall, because, spoilers, an abandoned playground would literally be the most picturesque thing ever. Seriously, I give my right not to go explore back there. But to be honest, I'm just glad I was able to see this place at all. Now, one of the soundtracks I have here mixed into this video features music from somewhere in Mexico at the end of time, another version of the classic Everywhere at the End of Time. This one, of course, featuring Mexican oldies distorted in time through the dying remnants of one's own memory. So, as I spin you this track, you too can see for yourselves what lies over the wall. There was something about these lampposts that just stole my heart. I don't know what it was, maybe the simple yet elegant design or striking height. The old-fashioned feel is definitely strong in this one. And yet, if we look behind the scenes, it's a nightmare falling in on itself.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, as you can tell, Macroplaza, or at least the Sears area, isn't necessarily a nice place to visit. That is, unless you don't care about rupturing your eardrums. Between all the buzzing lights and blaring activity, it can be a little chaotic.
This center court is so cool. Crap, it's amazing.
In 2015, the quickly dying mall would be purchased by Guardian Equities, who planned a massive renaissance for the structure. In 2016, the mall would reopen as Plaza Paseo Mall, with the new owners wanting to focus on the Mexican-American heritage of Pasadena. Now freshly painted with rainbow colors reflecting mostly well in the food court, owners would sadly drain the fountain around this time, instead turning it into a massive dance floor. Hoping that the new theming would bring back small businesses, it would for a very short time, but the loss of Macy's in 2017 would be the death blow. Without either two of its OG anchors, Macroplaza Mall, as it would be renamed again in 2018, would begin to take the shape you see today. Now, you may have seen it earlier, but during one of my many visits to this mall while collecting footage, I did spot a bouncy castle down the old Dillard's way, and while I stupidly didn't get any more footage of it, I did happen to take this photo, which ended up becoming one of, if not my favorite pictures I've ever taken. In 2020, Palais Royale would be one of the last to close as the parent stage stores went bankrupt. Now, with its only anchor being a Sears, you can see the dire straits that the mall was in. Sears, of course, wouldn't stick around, announcing closure in November of 2020, and leaving by January of 2021. The store would be revamped into a smaller format Sears hometown store, however, they wouldn't last long, closing in May of 2022. And really, that's where it sort of just ends for Macroplaza, because as of filming this in 2023, the mall is still open, with just a small handful of tenants keeping its legacy going. Without any anchors and slowly but surely closing stores, it's only really a matter of time. So what do you think the future holds for Macroplaza Mall? Do you see any potential in a future comeback, or are its days long behind it? Let me know what you think down below. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all so much for watching tonight's episode. Macroplaza Mall was one I actually didn't have on my radar for a long time, but my friends insisted and eventually I caved in. And I'm so glad that I was able to see this mall with my own eyes. It gives off some of the most surreal sights I knowingly will never forget. If any of you are ever in the area, stop in, walk the halls, see the sights, and maybe even do a boogie on the dance floor. If you guys enjoy my Dead Mall content, consider subscribing as it helps out so much and it means the world to me. Also, consider checking out the Patreon as we have a ton of fun and exclusive content over there. Next week, as we travel into the western suburbs, we check out yet another mall not on my radar, one which would end up closing just after we had left. Guess which mall we'll be at, and I'll shout you out in the next episode. But until then, have yourselves a lovely evening, and peace out, guys. See you later.
Thank you, Chief. God, rest in peace.
This is where his feet use this. It's the last resemblance of his feet.
Of that, there was a man here. There was another one stolen here too.